My name is Janelle Riley. I'll be your host today. Thank you so much for making it out to this SAG Foundation conversation with Gary Oldman. Judging by the tweets and emails I've been getting this week, I don't think I've ever had such excitement around an event. Congratulations everyone on getting in. And we have with us today the true definition of an actor's actor, consistently delivering brilliant and brave performances on stage and on screen. He can play everything from a punk rocker to a gay playwright to Harry Potter's godfather. Please welcome Gary Oldman.
Oh, good crowd.
Yeah. Good actor.
My kind of crowd.
Thank you so much for being here. I know you're busy. And since this is a SAG audience, can I start off by asking how you got your SAG card?
How'd I get my SAG card? I did a movie. It was a long time ago. I think it may have been Criminal Law. And it was an American film. So that's, you know.
This is your first American film, right?
I think one of the first, yeah. And then it was, and then followed by a little thing called Chattahoochee, and then State of Grace. But yeah, it was, God, that thing was just so cool to have.
Did they explain to you? I mean, did you know what a SAG card was, or were they like, you have to buy this in order to
No,
work?
they just said I had to join. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they said you don't have any choice. So, yeah.
Well, I want to start at the beginning. I know you were born in London, and you were a singer and pianist as a child.
A bit of a piano player, but
Okay.
not really a singer. It's all this stuff it gets. And you look at Wikipedia and all this crap that's talked about you. Yeah, I was never a singer.
Well, they said you were a good singer, if that makes a difference.
Okay, well, let them say. I'm happy. I'm a wonderful singer.
When did you first realize you were interested in acting?
I saw a movie. I was at home one evening, and there was a preview came up on the TV, and it was a Brian Ford's movie with Malcolm McDowell in it called The Raging Moon, but it may have been called something else here. It may not stand the test of time. I have not seen it for 30-something years, but Malcolm McDowell came on, and it was like, as alcoholics call it, a sort of moment of clarity. I had a moment of clarity. It was like a light going on, and I thought, I want to do that. And he had all those, he had all those things that you need. That he has menace, he has vulnerability, unpredictability, just all the things you need, I think, to make an actor. And I just connected with it. And I'd never been in plays. I impersonated a little when I was a kid. I used to sort of mimic people. I was always sort of good at that. But I was quite a shy kid. But I saw Malcolm, and that was it. Yeah.
Have you ever told Malcolm?
I later met him, and my mother got in there very quickly. Oh, you're his hero. But it's that thing, it's that old John Lennon thing, where he went to the cinema, and there were girls, lining up around the block to see Elvis Presley, and every time he came on the screen, they all went crazy and they screamed, and he went, "That's a good job." It's just takes you like that sometimes. Yeah.
Did your family encourage the arts? Because your sister went into acting as well.
Well, my sister went into acting at 54 years old. Yeah, I cast her in a film I made called Nil by Mouth.
That was her first job?
Yeah. And then she's become She's in a soap opera. She's in a thing called EastEnders.
Oh,
You watch that?
very popular soap opera.
I don't watch it, actually. But she's very, very famous.
And she'd never had any interest in acting before?
No, no.
What was she doing before?
She was my sister. Well, my sister would never do a job unless she could, what she called, have a fiddle. There always had to be a bit of a, she always had to get a kickback from it somehow, you know what I mean? And she would call, what we call in the UK chalking up. Is it OTB with the odds?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she used to do that. She used to drive a lorry, trucks and stuff like. Yeah, she was just she's a real character, and I needed. I auditioned a lot of actresses, and I couldn't. It just wasn't working. So I said, I'm going to put you in the movies, and she soon caught on.
Yeah, I'll say.
She learned very quickly. Yeah.
Now, is it true that you applied to but were turned down by the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art?
Yes, I was. All my heroes were the people that I sort of looked at. I mean, there was the American guys over here that were the usual suspects. You got, you know, Al Pacino. And De Niro, and there were those guys, Gene Hackman, and then there was, well, obviously Malcolm McDowell, but there were Albert Finney, Tom Courtenay, Alec Guinness, Laurence Olivier, all those guys that one sort of looked up to. They had all had this career that sort of started with the Royal Academy, so it was an obvious place for me to go, and I found them very rude. A woman sat there knitting.
During your audition?
Yeah, and another person was sort of looking at papers, sort of smoking a cigarette, and I finished my audition, and they just said, well, think about something else to do for a living.
Oh my God.
Do you have anything to fall back on? And so that was a blow.
Yeah.
It was a blow. But I dusted myself off and, went for it, and I got into another school. And have now learned that they are sort of much of a muchness. I mean, you just you leave the bad, take the good, and it's about your own commitment. It's about application, really, more. Of course, there are great teachers, but I went and I worked very hard, and was the first in my year to get a job, to get an equity card. But that wasn't. It wasn't because I was the most talented guy there. I worked very hard. I wrote the letters. I had my picture taken. Everybody else was kind of fucking around at the pub, and I was sort of doing the work and taking it seriously.
Was there a specific method or a school of thought that you were studying at that time, or were you just taking everything in and trying anything?
It was a little bit of, it was Stanislavski, and then it was the great Stella Adler, Meisner, a little bit of that. But I went off and found those things. Mainly it was Stanislavski, and I went up. I came off book. You know what I mean? I went a little farther afield. I was interested in. I was fascinated with American cinema, and the sort of the American approach to acting.
You find it's different than
Which
the
I always,
English
but I
approach?
always felt that I did it instinctively.
Mm-hmm.
I just always, it wasn't that thing of, well, darling, that thing, that tradition of, well, I put on the shoes, and it's all style over content. I felt that I did it instinctively, so I was always drawn to. and America's given. I mean, you've given us some of the greatest actors that have ever been on screen. I mean, it's just a fact.
Did you have any specific teachers or mentors there who really helped you out early in your career?
No, I honestly, I can't say I did. No, it was a struggle. There were other people that were pushed to the front. I was very quiet, very shy. I didn't get I never really got a break at college. I was never in a leading role or, yeah.
What kind of roles were you doing there?
Puck.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, but it's a good one, but you know. It's a good role, but it ain't Oberon, is it? You know, yeah, Puck's a nice part. If these shadows have offended. But then they said to me that I would only ever sort of play Puck.
Really?
Yes, those kind of roles.
You were discouraged a lot by people.
I was very, very discouraged. Yes, I was. I'm not complaining, but yeah. So it wasn't. I wasn't the, you know, the wonder kid.
Mm-hmm. Who was, and where's he now?
A guy called Jeremy, someone who was very sort of. He had a sort of Laurence Olivier, the dark eyes and bushy, deep-set eyes beneath bushy eyebrows.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was going to be really embarrassed if you said like Tim Roth, and there would be no point. Upon graduation, you started working in theater pretty quickly. Did you have to take survival jobs, or were you always able to make your living as an actor?
I have. Well, there was work that I did before I left school and becoming an actor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, proper work. You know, like real work, kind of. But when I got my first job, I've been incredibly lucky. I've got to say, I've always made my living as an actor. I feel a little embarrassed to say it, really, but I've never waited tables, and I've not had to do those. I've not had to do those things, so I feel very fortunate.
I'm curious though, being turned down by RADA and not, you know, sort of heralded at your school, that would have destroyed a lot of people.
Yeah, you've got to have yes, it did.
How did you know that?
It was much later on when I was working. I worked with the director, who said, you know, you're very good. But she said, you're good at this. But it was much later on. I'd already become a professional by then. But you've got to develop to skin. That's the sea that you swim in, and you have that. That's something you have to develop, because it is all about you're constantly being rejected, in a way, even on a set. You know,
really?
I mean, you'll come with ideas, you know, and you may say to a director, "I have this idea or suggestion," and they may say, "Show me," and you do it, and they say, "Yeah, it's good, but you know, I've got this in my head," and so you're always this. I mean, you are being turned down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I worked, but I didn't always get the things I wanted or went after. But that's something that I always talk to young actors about. That's the thing you have to develop. If you really want to do it, you have to be irrevocably diseased. You have to have what I call I test positive for the theatre. and then you, because that is what drives you. Otherwise, I mean, you see people, they just fall by the wayside. So there's a commitment, but it's not intellectual. It's something that you have in your soul to keep at it.
So I'm not sure how it worked for you. Did you just go out and start auditioning for theater? Did you have an agent? How were you submitted
No, I didn't
for
have an
roles?
agent. It was, I don't know if it's changed or whether it's the same here, but we had regional theatre, and then you would just write letters.
Really?
So you would write letters and send your photograph, and then they would write back and say, we're casting the autumn season or the winter or spring, and be here on this day with your two pieces. Do you have that here? The two pieces. We do a modern and a Shakespeare, or a modern and a classic. Yeah, and so that's how it was. I didn't even have. To this day, I don't have a publicist.
Really?
No.
So for your two pieces, did you do Puck or?
No, I know. You know what I did? I did a speech from Entertaining Mr. Sloan by Joe Alton, and
You're really prescient.
yeah, and I did a little thing from The Two Gentlemen of Verona. Yeah.
And how were you at auditioning? I mean, you must have been pretty good. You started getting work right away.
Nervous.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. It's an odd thing. Auditioning is, I think, it's very hard. You've got to come in and you've got to burn from the first bar. You know, you've got to knock them dead. And, you know, and it depends who it is. It depends who it is. I mean, for my own movie, I went to a theatre group called Anna Scher in northern London, and I was looking for some young kids for the movie. And I saw this boy improvising, and he was phenomenal. And I gave him a half an hour to read a couple of pages, and we went upstairs, and he read for me, and he was terrible. And I said, I think you're a better actor than what you've just read.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to learn it, take it away for a week, and come back and see me? He came back, he was prepared. He was the only person, actually, who was on time.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he came back and he blew me away, and I leant across the table and shook his hand and said, you got the job. I gave him the job on the spot.
Wow.
Yeah, and I said, you're wonderful. Actors need to hear that. I think you know, I've been lucky to have worked with some amazing directors, and some of them know how to just be around people, and then some of them are just bullies.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that they have to get in, they have to head fuck you to get something out of you,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it totally throws aside one's work, one's experience, one's technique. I mean, they toss that aside and think, I have to do this to you to get something from you. As if, then why read Stella Adler? Why do any of that work? Just come to work and be directed by a bully, you know. And so when I went, you know, when I made my own film, I was very conscious of that.
Mm-hmm.
That you, it's hard to, I think it's hard to walk into a room and meet people and just do it, you know, or even on a set.
Mm. When was the last time you auditioned? It has to have been years.
1935. No, I jokingly say I say I haven't. Really since. I've done a few scripts. Hang on a minute. Dracula was the last time.
Real. First of all, I'm shocked to hear you auditioned for Dracula.
Yeah, yeah. No, Dracula was the last time. But I think the last time I actually took public transport was when the reviews for Sid and Nancy came out.
Oh, really?
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, well, the problem is I'll believe anything, and you're a really good actor. So
Oh,
anything
sorry.
you say.
Yeah, I used to always say to people, do you remember where you were when JFK opened? and for a second there, they go...
Where were you?
Somehow, I Hollywood. I was in Hollywood.
Now, I know you worked a lot with the Greenwich Young People's Theatre.
Yeah, I
and-
did a little bit for them, yeah.
Well, you won a slew of awards for your work in The Pope's Wedding, and you also did some shows with the Royal Shakespeare Company. What were some of your favorite stage roles during that time?
I think my time actually at the Royal Court was a great time. It's a little jewel box of a theatre to play. Have you been to? Does anyone here know the Royal Court in London? It's fantastic, fantastic space. And also, I worked at a theatre company called Glasgow Citizens Theatre, which I worked there 80, 81, 82, and toured with them. And you must know Mark Rylance, yes?
Oh, sure.
The great Mark Rylance. That was my first job. I had my first job with Mark.
Really?
Yeah, we were in the same company together. Yeah, he's I think maybe a year or two younger than me, but we were there together. So and also Kieran Hines he was in that company as well.
Oh my gosh.
And I hadn't seen until Tinker Tailor. I hadn't seen Kieran for 27 years.
Oh my
it was
gosh.
just sort of reconnecting with him, and have reconnected with Mark as well over the years. I used to always say people are flattering, and they throw things at you, and they say, well, you know, Gary, you know, you're the greatest you know, you're considered one of the best actors of your generation, you know, and I always say, well, yeah, but you ain't seen Mark Rylance.
Did you do Shakespeare with him by any chance?
I did a little bit of Shakespeare with him, and we were in some new plays and things like that. But you knew, the first thing, when I got there, he was in a play. And I remember the night I saw him, and he played a librarian who did not speak through the entire play, but he just sat there stamping books, you know, and I thought he had more hair in those days, and he had these glasses on, and he looked a little like James Dean, and you could not take your eyes off him. He's the only person that you watched, and I thought, who's that kid? Who is that guy? Yeah.
Did you have sort of a career plan for yourself? Did you think you'd always be in theatre? Did you want to do
Yeah, I
film and
always thought
TV?
I'd be in theatre. Yeah, I never thought the movies it was that thing that other people did. You know, well, yeah, it was like, you know, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and all those sort of they were the people that, you know, or Michael Caine, you know. I don't know. But they were like my heroes, and they were the people that did all of that. So when I got it's funny. I've got mixed feelings about. I've very mixed feelings about Sid and Nancy. I really do. I see it as a sort of a curtain raiser, a little vaudeville piece before the actual career started, and there's much of it I would burn. Yeah, I would just stomp it into the ground.
I do want to talk about Sid and Nancy, actually, but
No, I
it
don't.
wasn't too bad. I prepared.
No, go on then. What do you want to know
wasn't
about?
again, this is something I heard online, so this could be completely wrong, but I heard that your first film was supposed to be Gossip in 1982, but they never actually shot it.
How'd you know that?
Yeah. Wikipedia is not so bad now.
Yeah, Gossip.
Yeah, a Don Boyd film?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were cast in it, and did it fall apart, or what happened?
It didn't happen. Yeah. But I was a difficult client as a young actor to represent, because I went up for a movie with I was going to play the Sloane in Entertaining Mr. Sloane in Rep, a 2-week run, 2 weeks rehearsal, a 3-act play, 2-week run in this dingy little part of England, in this sort of little theatre that no one ever went to, and also they wanted me to play one of the guys on the boat of Mutiny on the Bounty, the one that Tony Hopkins did with Mel Gibson.
Sure.
And I just didn't want to do it. And the more I said no, the more they put, they said, well, we're paying more money, and we'll make the part a little bigger. And so the more I turned them down, the more sort of excited they were to get me, right? I was 22 or whatever I was, 23.
Had you auditioned for it, or they just
Yeah,
knew?
I had initially auditioned
Mm-hmm.
for the guy, and I just said no, and I said, but it isn't Joe Alton. The script is good, but it isn't Joe Alton. And I said, what am I going to get out of this at the end of the day? I said, I'm probably going to go off to some island, wherever they shot it.
In paradise?
Yeah, in paradise. And I really thought, my reaction was, I'll get a suntan and an apartment out of it. But I won't get the satisfaction of playing Sloane.
Mm.
So I did the play.
My
agent went crazy. He said, you've never, Jonathan, his name was, darling. He used to always say, darling, I want you to go up for it. He said, you're going up for this film, and it's not about the money. I'd always want to do theatre, and he would always push me to the films kind of thing. Because, well, I mean, I understand he wants to make a living, and he wants that commission on a movie, not on £82 a week before tax at the Royal Court. Where you get your paycheck, and it was like 37 quid, to work at the Royal Court, to work at the best theatre in those days. You weren't even taking home £50 a week. Quite amazing, really, when you think about it. 1983, 84, and but my agent used to just go crazy with me. Maybe I should have done the movie. I don't know, and maybe the movie career would have started earlier, and maybe it would have. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I was naive and headstrong, and wanted to do it my way. I wanted it to, and I was in love with the theatre. You got me talking about all the old days. I feel so.
When was the last time you were on stage?
Oh, that's well, we did. Do you know a play called Serious Money?
Sure.
Carol Churchill.
Yeah.
I think that was the last time.
And when was that?
God, it was about, must be about 20 years ago.
Oh. Do you miss it? Do you want to go back?
I flirt with it, yeah.
Yeah.
I get all misty-eyed and romantic about it. I don't, go, oh, yeah. I'm not, yeah, I'll come, I'll do it again.
Okay,
Yeah,
promise?
but it just gets, you get swept along, and just things happen in your life, you get kids, you get all sorts of things that then, and you suddenly, I think you look around and you go, my God, was that 5 years ago? And then 5 becomes 10. So it really is almost 20 years ago I was on the stage, although it feels like five years ago.
So you were cast in Gossip, and then it fell apart. I was
Yep.
going to ask if that was devastating for you, but it doesn't sound like...
No, it was terrible script.
So there's a reason it fell apart.
Yeah. I think that was where the agent, that was after the Sloane incident, when he said,
really?
come on, you've got to be in, you've got to be in a movie. You've got to do a movie.
So you did it for him.
I kind of maybe did it for him, and I was thrilled that it fell apart. Yeah.
Well, then obviously a lot of people first took notice of you as Sex Pistols bassist Sid Vicious. This was in 1986. What was the process of landing that role? Did you want to go out for this one?
No.
The reluctant movie star.
Yeah. No, I was in a play, and they saw me in a play, and I auditioned.
Which play?
It was an Edward Bond trilogy at the RSC,
Okay.
and I was. They saw me in that, and I auditioned, or met, or something like that. And then It wasn't a very good. It wasn't a very good script. And
Even in the end, you feel that way?
No, I think we helped. We shaped it. You know, we helped it. But I was a Motown guy. I was James Brown, Motown, David Bowie. You know, I wasn't. The punk thing was not my not my scene. So it was. So I had no connection to it even.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. I've an appreciation of it has grown, really. And in hindsight, and looking back and thinking culturally, that phenomenon. It's often when you're in it, you don't see it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But no, I reluctantly went committed to it.
So when they call you to tell you you've just won this lead role in a movie, were you disappointed?
No, I thought it would be a challenge, and it would be interesting, and it would be. I was scared, as one often is. You know, I think it's healthy to be. I was scared, I'm terrified with Tinker Tailor.
Sure.
I think it keeps you on your toes, and it's what makes the work. It's work in progress. You know what I mean? I think it'd be a very sad day when you sit there and think, you know, oh God, I'm wonderful. I'm hypercritical, and so even to this day, I still get doubts, and we all have those voices in our head that say we're no good. Yeah.
So how did you go about preparing to play Sid? And is it true that you lost so much weight you had to be hospitalized?
I did lose weight. I lost too much weight, but I didn't do it through a doctor. Yeah. Yes, I was. Also, I was in plays. You see, at the time.
Oh, wow.
So that's the. You know, I look back now. Prick up your ears. I was in 5 plays at the RSC that were in repertoire. So I was doing. The car would come at 6. I would do Joe Alton until 5. The car would come, take me to the RSC, and I had 5 plays in my head, and we were doing them in rep, and I look back at that now, and I just go, you know. I mean, when I was doing Sid Vicious, I would get up at like 5 in the morning, I remember, and I used to do, I was decorating the apartment. So I would do painting and sanding window. I would sand window frames, hanging wallpaper, you know, before I'd go to work.
Uh-huh.
I was young. You know, do this over here, do that over there.
Sure.
You know, I had all that. Yeah, it was great. But looking back at it now, like it's hard enough now to just retain the script, let alone the script and 5 plays, you know. And I felt so sorry for those audiences, those. You've been to the Barbican. People here have been to the, and there's the studio theatre, there's the big theatre, and then there's the pit, they call it, appropriately named.
Yeah.
Pit. You know, 7 leagues below the sea. You know, this place that you would, you know, rehearsal rooms with no windows. You know, we would go. We would have 3 weeks off of one of the plays. So we'd play 1 in rep, or 2. There'd be 2 nights on, and then 3 nights on with the other play. And there'd be some plays that we wouldn't even touch for 3 weeks. And then we would meet in the green room, and we would have a speed run through of the lines, right? And then we would go on, and there were nights after 3 weeks, sometimes 5 weeks, and you didn't re-rehearse, where we would all come together, and I'd be standing waiting to go on and realise I'm supposed to actually come on from the other side. and you were, it was like a first night every time.
Yeah.
When you got back, it always felt sort of like a first night, and I feel so sorry for those audiences, because if you've not done a play for 5 weeks and you don't even re-rehearse it, I mean, not even for an afternoon, can you imagine a band? Can you imagine if you went and saw a band you know. And that's what Ginger Baker wanted when they got the cream back together. He said to Eric, he said, we don't need to rehearse, let's just do it. And Eric said, we haven't performed together for 30 fucking years. Let's just go on and do it. You know, so that was a strange time. Never enjoyed it. I never.
Really?
No,
You
I never
weren't enjoying it?
No, being in the company like that. Being in a company like that.
Did you guys always pull it off, or were there
No,
disasters?
that was terrible. It was terrible. You know, I mean, one night Juliet forgot to appear at the balcony. And we were backstage, so we were, and all you could hear, and it went, what was her name, Miss? I think it was Reynolds, and it went something like this: Miss Reynolds, you're off. To the stage immediately, please. You're off. And through the building, you just heard. We were like reading the paper in the dressing room like that. Went, she's off. What light from... And I think he was extemporising for a forlorn Romeo in the garden, you know. Great stories about... do you know what a maroon is?
Yeah, sure.
A maroon, which is that thing that they put, you know, where they explode and they put them backstage.
Right.
I was stage managing a play that had an explosion in. And I was, because we would do acting in those days, you would get, maybe they still do it. Do you do stage management so you have to do other things? So you would be a young actor at a company. Yeah. You have to make the tea, you paint the scenery, you know, you sweep the floor, you do all of that.
But we have coffee here.
But coffee, and, you know. And I was in charge of the maroons for this thing, of letting them off. And it was the last night, and there were 3 left. So I thought, really? I thought, well, we're not going to use them, you know, we need to use them up. And so I let off plaster was falling from the ceiling. The chandelier at the theatre was swinging. The set was like moving. Nothing like the theatre.
Yeah, no.
Nothing like the theatre.
You know, you mentioned Joe Orton a couple times earlier. So when the role in Prick Up Your Ears came about, was that a dream come true? Was that one you were really excited to do?
Oh yeah. Yeah. To play Joe. And I was very lucky actually to get it, because I had met Stephen Frears about 2 years before, because he wanted me to do My Beautiful Laundrette. And I went and met him and said, well, the script's not very good, is it? And I said, I come from London. People don't talk like this, you know. And I mean, that it wasn't out of, I wasn't rude. It was just, I thought, well, you would go and this is what you did, you know. And I said, well, you know, it's nice to meet you and I admire you, but I've got a few problems with the script and the thing. I was just such a kid, you know.
And did he just say thank you and send you on your way?
He said, no, I appreciate that, and, you know. And I went on my way. Dan Day-Lewis got the role.
Sure.
And then he called me for Orton.
Wow.
I was very surprised.
Sure.
Having insulted him. You know, insulted him. Script.
And how was the script for Prick Up Your Ears?
Alan Bennett. It was wonderful. It was written by Alan Bennett.
So from the beginning, you were okay with that?
God, it was, yeah. You don't get them often.
You've played a lot of real people, most notably probably Lee Harvey Oswald and Beethoven. Is it easier in a way to play someone who actually existed because you sort of have things to pull from, or do you prefer creating a character from scratch?
Bit of both, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think with people like Alton, you know, I mean, you have a responsibility to the character first, I think. But when people are members of the family are still living, you know, I mean, I met Joe's sister and his brother. So you're playing their brother,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have a responsibility to them. Beethoven thing it's a whole different thing because you are taking a very specific idea that Bernard had, that she was the immortal beloved, and when they found this letter, which they did actually.
Oh, really?
No, that letter exists. That's actual Beethoven's words in that letter.
I had no
immortal
idea.
Beloved. They found it in a desk. They found it in a little thing in the back of a bureau. But it's a mystery as to who it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was Bernard's, you know, that was his conceit, that it was that, and then that Schindler would go on this mission, on this journey to investigate and find out after he dies.
Mm-hmm.
You are, you know, I did a little reading, but you want to keep within that vision of what Bernard's trying to do. So you're, it can be. I feel if you're playing a character that you're kind of just making up, that's a fictional character, then you can really let your imagination, you know, you could really fly with it. You are restricted a little when you're playing a real character. But they've been great characters.
Yeah.
And I mean, Oliver Stone said to me there was very little of Oswald on the page, and he said he gave me airline tickets and money and said and a few contacts, and he said go and meet these people, go here, go to Dallas, go to New Orleans, and investigate and find out who Oswald was.
And people were willing to talk to you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of people came forward
Mm-hmm.
because they're making a movie, and then because you know the whole bloody world knows him. You know, everybody then knows him. You know, so you would have to filter that. But you go out, you'll be surprised. You could just go out like people do who make documentaries or investigators. They go out. You've just got to have a little confidence to get someone, open them up. And then someone would say to me, oh, but you need to speak to so-and-so because he was working with Oswald when, and you sort of put the thing together in that way. And that was rare because you're not often asked to do that.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier that as a child you were a really good mimic. How important is the mimicry, looking and sounding just like the character, or is that secondary in creating?
I think it's secondary, really. I mean, I happen to have a facility and a good ear, a musical ear for it. Like someone who can sing, or I think it's the difference between someone who can sing on key,
Mm-hmm.
in key and not, versus someone who sings maybe a little flat or a little sharp, you know. There was this, would you like to see my impersonation of an actor in the wings at the RSC? Here's the stage, and there's the wings. And you used to stand in the auditorium, and you were at the on that big stage, and you couldn't hear the cue. You couldn't hear it because of the thing, so that you had a light. So you'd have the red light, and then you'd wait, and you'd wait for it to go green, and then you would enter, and it'd be the usual bullshit. My lord, you know. All that rhetorical acting, you know, banner shed. But anyway, actor in the wings at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And here's the light. right. He's looking like. Light goes to green. My lord!
So you've got that, you've got Michael Caine. What other impersonations do you have in your pocket?
What is Al? Hola! See, this is when you see these things on a set, you know, this like tinker, it's very serious and it's austere. But when you cut, you've got John Hurt at the end of the table, who is a great raconteur, and he tells amazing sort of stories. And you're sitting opposite Colin Firth, who has got the darkest, naughtiest twinkle in his eye. And he's the one who can rein it in. John makes you laugh. The director wants it all to now get serious because we're going for another take. I'm, you know, biting my lip like that. And Colin's just got it all down. He's got the glasses on the head like that, and he's all ready for another take. But he looks across at you, and there's this sort of little sparkle, like in one of his, like that, and you're going, stop it, like that, you know? What? We had some fun.
I'm glad to hear there was some levity on the set, because it's a very serious movie.
Yeah, but there's, yeah. Well, that's, you know, and that's Thomas, too, the director. Who's,
I want to get back to your first American film. You mentioned Criminal Law.
It's a long career.
Earlier.
What are you doing later?
We're like 3 movies in.
Yeah. Because the buses stop running, you know.
Oh, just wait till we get to Fifth Element. We're dedicating like
No,
45
no,
minutes to
no.
that. I have to imagine after Sid and Nancy and Prick Up Your Ears, Hollywood must have been courting you. Was that how Criminal Law
Yeah.
came to you? And you were reciprocated. You were interested in doing American films. In fact, you moved here like in 1990?
Yeah.
What prompted that?
I'd always loved America. I'd always liked American movies. And at the time I left, there was really no British film industry. They were making 3 films a year, you know, and if you weren't, you'd go up for them, and if you didn't get them, you know what I mean? There was Tim Roth, Dan Day-Lewis, and me. And then there was, you know, and then later, and then just behind us was, you know, then there was Ken Branagh. There was, I think, maybe Colin's a little younger than me, Colin Firth, and then, so, but there weren't, you know, when I talk about, you know, My Beautiful Laundrette, that was it. So I just moved where they make movies, because I enjoyed making films and I wanted to practice. So I thought, well, I'll come to America where they make movies, and they make great, and they have made, you know, great movies. But it's hard to imagine when you think of things like, Dog Day Afternoon, All the President's Men, The Conversation. I mean, just to name a few. They were mainstream movies. Those were the movies that you went to go and that you watched at the cinema. Now you've got to find them. Now it's 3D.
Oh. We talked about 3D actually a couple weeks ago. You said you feel like you're being assaulted when you watch it.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's the imagery, the cutting, the editing, the sound assaults you, the visuals. It's just, I find it. I don't know what's happened to it, and it was only a gimmick. This is the weird thing. It was a gimmick to get people away from the television. You know, when it was first around, and it didn't last very long.
It was terrible.
So do you like it as someone that has to
No,
go
I
and watch
don't.
movies and you sit there with the glasses and things?
There's one movie that really actually the 3D elevates it, and that's Hugo.
Hugo, I was going to say Hugo, yeah.
That's one exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen Hugo.
Might change your mind that it can be good, but overall, no. I don't.
Well, you know, but then you've got, you know, It's Scorsese.
Yeah, exactly. He's allowed to play around as much as he
He
wants.
is. Yeah.
Was Criminal Law the first time you'd done an American accent?
In a film, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I've done them in plays, but,
Oh, okay.
but yeah.
And had you always had a facility with that, or did you work with someone?
I
It's
worked with a great
flawless.
guy called Tim Monarch. Great voice
Mm-hmm.
coach. From the early days, I did about 4 or 5 films with Tim. And now you can't work with Tim. He's too busy. I mean, I mean that in a nice way,
Yeah.
not like, but he's just always.
Yeah.
He's you know.
Does it come naturally to you now? Can you just slip right into American,
well,
or do you still?
Yeah, I've lived here
Yeah.
for 20 years nearly, and my boys are American. I mean, it's what I hear. I mean, I had to take voice lessons. I took an accent thing to play Smiley.
Oh, really? That's so interesting.
Because I'll hit an R too hard, or there'll be little things that I have in my accent now, where
You had to relearn British?
yeah, because I knew that I'd be reading the scenes, and I knew that I was making some sounds that were American, or close to American.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to, work on them.